Good afternoon. My name is Pam Cameron. I'm the author of Sport, Shipdog of the Great Lakes. Thank you to your library for inviting me and Sport to talk about his story. He was a real dog, and that's why I felt it was important that I write a story about him. I'd also like to tell something about libraries before I talk about Sport. If you're listening to this, that tells us that you and your family enjoy going to your public library. Aren't you great? Aren't you a great family that goes to the Millington Library and finds books to read and talks to the staff? And I bet they help you find good books. I also bet you're part of the summer reading program. So enjoy that. I see that there's a chance for you to go and read to a therapy dog. And sometime this summer, 2 dogs are coming to your library. That is pretty cool. So enjoy your library this summer. Now back to Sport. Sport was a real dog. I found out about him because I wanted to be a lighthouse helper. I wanted to help at a lighthouse. So I heard about Sport and I found a photograph about him, or photograph of him. Now here he is. If you look carefully in the middle of that preserver, the 2 men are holding that, you can see a dog's face. That is Sport. So because there was a photograph about Sport, I could do some research, and I did. And I found out about his life. I'll show you the cover of the book, and you have the book at your library, so you can check it out. The book is Sport, Shipdog of the Great Lakes, as I said. Now there's Sport, there's a ship, and there's a lighthouse. Have you ever been to a lighthouse? Let's talk a minute about lighthouses, and then you'll understand why Sport was a helper. Here's my fun one that I have, a puzzle lighthouse. And there it's on some rocks. It's very tall, isn't it? But what happens at the top? I bet you know, but let's just take a look here. Yes, a light goes on at the top of a lighthouse every night. When the sun goes down and it gets dark, a lighthouse needs to be turned on. And it's turned on by a lighthouse keeper who often lives in a house over this way. It would be a house. And a lighthouse keeper and his family would live there. And he or she, sometimes there were women, the women would help, men would help. There's inside the lighthouse, there's a spiral staircase, and they would carry fuel to light that light to the very top. That would have been a hard job, right? They did it all over Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Superior. There were lighthouses. Do you know why there were lighthouses? Yes, to keep the ships safe that were out on the water. So if you can imagine, the water would be right here and a ship would be out in the water and it would be dark. And this was before radio or cell phones. And the only way they knew where they were is if they looked out off their ship and they saw a flashing lighthouse. Now, if you look carefully, this one is flashing on and off. Each lighthouse had a certain flash or certain characteristic. So the people on the ships would know that's a signal. We know exactly where we are. We're near Saginaw, or we're near Detroit. Where are we? Or Port Huron, or Alpena. Where are we? The flash would tell them where they were, so they wouldn't come too close to the land and have an accident, have a shipwreck. They would stay off this way, they'd stay away, or maybe they'd say, this is Port Huron. We're going to come into Port Huron. Why is Sport, a dog, connected with a lighthouse? Well, he lived on a ship that brought all the supplies to the lighthouses. And this is the ship he lived on, very large ship. And they would bring the fuel that lit the lighthouse. They would bring food to the lighthouses and library books for the children that lived at the lighthouses. They would help with repairs. They would bring paint, lots of things to help a lighthouse stay going. So now I had all that information about a dog, a ship, and I read about lighthouses, and then I knew I could write a story about sports life. I'd like to share a few parts of the book with you, and then after I do that, I'll share a little bit about why Sport was a very good working dog on that ship. And we'll talk about maybe you have some animals at your house who are helpers, or you have seen helping and working dogs in your life. So let's share a few pages. Find out how Sport got on that ship. Now the story starts with a storm. Now you can see some clouds in the background. Renee Grafe is the illustrator of the book. I did not draw the pictures, but didn't she do a beautiful job? She took the photographs that I found and used them to make sure she did a very accurate illustration of the ship or what the crewmen are wearing. And she even used the photographs of Sport. But here he is as a puppy. With a storm rolling in over Lake Michigan, the docks seemed even busier than usual. Big ships made their way into port and dropped anchor in the Milwaukee River. Now that's over in Wisconsin. Sirens and bells sounded warnings, and dock workers shouted to each other in the rain. No one noticed the skinny puppy wandering the docks. No one heard him when he barked nervously into the wind. And no one saw where he ended up when the raindrops started to fall. So there he is. And in those days, dogs were running around quite a bit. There weren't the rescue organizations we have now. You couldn't get your dog chipped or licensed to, or look at, he doesn't even have a collar on. So there were lots of stray dogs around. Until the Hyacinth arrived. Now the Hyacinth was the ship that I showed the photo of. Off the starboard, dog in the water, dog in the water. Captain, we're taking the dinghy down. Albert and Clifford, now they're right here. There's so many illustrations here. This is the big ship right here. And Albert and Clifford got the little boat off their boat. Their boat was so large it could have a little boat. And they just saw that little puppy in the water. We're taking the dinghy down. Albert and Clifford didn't wait for the captain's okay. Quickly, the two crewmen lowered the boat into the water, and they steered the dinghy, trying to reach the puppy before the river current carried him into the lake. Come here, pup. We'll help you, they called out over the wind. Come on, we'll get you. Just as they reached the dog, Albert reached out. He wrapped his hands around the puppy and pulled him to safety. So Sport was rescued, wasn't he? We hear about dogs being rescued. You might have a dog that you've rescued from an organization helped you take that dog home. I wish I had time to hear your rescue dog stories. But okay, now then they got back on their big ship. So they were down in the water here. They got back on their big ship. And some of the crew gathered round. Clifford toweled the puppy dry. I can't believe it. The fur next to his body is dry. And he's not even shaking. Look at his paws, Albert said. They're webbed like a duck. What kind of dog is he? Clifford wondered. The captain ran his hands over the dog's head and down to his haunches. He looks like he's part Newfoundland, a Newfie. The captain knew that Newfies are great water dogs. Their double coat keeps them warm, and their webbed paws help them swim. An idea formed in the captain's head. We could use a good ship dog. This dog could be the one. Get a little closer there. Everyone liked the idea. They decided to name their new friend Sport, and that's how a homeless puppy found a home on a ship. So they're the people that decided Sport should be on the ship. Now I'll show just some pages here, and then I'll read some other passages. This is the ship, and if you check the book out, you'll be able to see the parts we've located or identified, different parts of the ship. This is the pilot house where the captain would have been. And here's Sport way back here. So he had a big area to explore, and he did. Now the ship, as I said previously, let's look here, it took supplies to all the lighthouses. So here's a view of the ship, and they're starting to get ready to do some deliveries. They put all the things down below here. You can help with this or think about it if you were on a crew. The captain called, all cargo lashed and tight. Aye, aye, Captain. Can you, aye, aye, Captain? Anchors pulled. Aye, aye, Captain. Heave ho, we're off. Can you feel the chug of the boat? It's off to deliver to a lighthouse, and Sport's on board. Now this is an example of a lighthouse. There's that house I mentioned. This lighthouse keeper is right here, and there's his family. And the Hyacinth is back here, and they couldn't come into shore. They couldn't get too close here. It'd be too shallow. They would have a shipwreck. So they would bring little boats in with the supplies. So it's down below here, there would be supplies. They also brought barges in. And this is the thing about Sport. He loved to swim. He was a Newfoundland, and they loved to swim. So what we know they do is Sport would get in the ship, little boat. They weren't going to leave him behind. He wanted to go see the children, don't you suppose? And once they got close to shore, they would throw this line in. There's a line right here. Sport would jump in, and I have a drawing here or illustration. We can show you how he would have jumped in off a boat. And then he would have pulled this in, pulled the boat in. Now it's floating, so it's not as heavy as you think. And Newfoundlands are very strong. And from a book, I will show you in a minute how they train Newfoundlands today to pull in boats and to be rescue dogs. But here he's just having fun. He knows he's going to see the kids, and this is an island, so they probably were excited knowing that Sport was coming to visit them. Oh, here's an example of Sport jumping out of another boat. Here he is, he's jumping in to rescue some tools. Does anyone know what this is? It's not a lighthouse, it's a buoy. If you're out on lakes this summer, look and see if you can see any buoys out there, because they also mark shallow areas and hazards. Maybe there's some rocks here. And the worker from the Hyacinth is putting some fuel in here. So this had a light at the top too. Let's show you another photograph. A baseball team? Yes. And if you look very carefully down here, there's Sport. And they've put their baseball bats around him. Well, when I found this photograph, I go, yes, I have to put a baseball scene in the book. I'm not going to make it up. It has to be truthful. It has to be that Sport was part of the baseball team. These are the men that were the crew, the men who worked on the ship, and Sport was on their baseball team. So here's the scene. Now I imagine this. the crew was playing a team from another ship. And Sport's on their team. Sport knows he wants to come out. Oh, I also forgot to tell you, Sport's part retriever. Oh, do you think he liked to play with balls? He did. So this is what I imagined, knowing that he was part of their team. The other team, someone on the other team got like, this isn't right. We don't need a dog out on the baseball field. And that man, I'm thinking it's a man on the other team, said, get that mutt off the field. Get him off. We're playing baseball here. But the crowd, pretend you were watching that baseball game, started yelling, Sport, Sport, Sport. We want sport. Can you yell that? Sport, Sport, Sport. We want sport. And Sport got out on the field that night. He caught the ball, probably out in outfield, and he tagged players. Of course, he needed someone else to bat for him. So I wrote that just because I knew Sport had been an important part of their baseball team. And there's H on the uniforms, H for Hyacinth, the name of their ship. Now, Newfoundlands are known to rescue. They're rescue people. They're very good on ships because if there was some danger, someone was in trouble, Newfies would jump off the ship. They're strong, big dogs, about 100 pounds, 200 pounds, and they could pull people to shore. In all my research, I couldn't find anything like that Sport had done. He hadn't saved anyone's life, but that was okay. The ship must have felt, we've got a nice dog here. He's helping us. He's a companion for us. He's probably a bit of a watchdog, a friendly watchdog. But one thing I did find out pretty dramatic about Sport is that he got lost in Chicago. And there he is. He would get off the boats whenever they would come to a port, and he'd just sniff around until they had unloaded all the supplies. This just happened to be Chicago, where they'd get coal and other big supplies in a big town like Chicago and then go off on the lake. Well, there was a man who saw Sport, and you can see Sport's bigger now. And as a reminder, no licenses, no dog collar. You could just take a stray dog. And that man did because he needed a watchdog for his warehouse. Oh boy, look at Sport. Tail is down, his head is down. You can almost see those sad eyes that Renee drew on him. And she drew a sad dog face, didn't she? Well, the fun thing about this was the best thing that happened was lots of people knew Sport because he was always coming to Chicago and all the other towns on the lake. And a man saw him a few days later and said, Sport, what are you doing here? And then he turned to the man who had taken Sport and said, this dog belongs on the Hyacinth. He needs to be returned to his ship. So the man that had found Sport, he rescued him, didn't he? He took Sport back to the docks, but Sport's boat was gone. The Hyacinth had left. They didn't want to leave Sport in Chicago, but they had to go on their deliveries. They had to keep a schedule. They went down there, and there was a big passenger ship. And there were big passenger ships on the Great Lakes in those days. That's how people took vacations in the Great Lakes. And the captain was way up there in the pilot house, and he looked down and he saw Sport. And he goes, is that Sport? We could take him back to his ship. We'll take him. And Sport got on this big passenger ship. And it was called the SS Indiana, named after the state of Indiana. Now, this is my favorite illustration in the story because it shows children. We had children at the lighthouse, but this shows a lot of children that were on this passenger ship. Sport got down in the ship. They put him down below deck, down in the storage area. And the word got around the ship that there was a dog on the ship. They had rescued a dog, and they were taking the dog back to the dog ship. And the children started coming down from the dining room to meet this dog. They all wanted to hear the story of a ship dog who had fallen in the Milwaukee River during a storm, who had joined a crew and lived on a ship, and who had helped bring supplies to the lighthouses, who played baseball, who looked out for his crewmen on the Hyacinth, and who had made friends all over the lake. And you see a smile on Sport's face. And look at the children. You can imagine that could have been you or other children from 100 years ago, but it shows we all love to give dogs a hug. Now, they got Sport back to his ship, and here he is. It had been exciting, Sport thought, but he was happy to be back with his crew on the Hyacinth. There's another dog smile. He had good friends to play with tonight and important work to do tomorrow. And you kind of know what that work will be. He'll be a helper on his ship. And there's a lighthouse lit up at night with the stars. That night, Sport fell asleep to the sway of the water and the sound of the water, the sway of the ship and the sound of the water. He was a ship dog, and this ship was his home. So that's a bit of an overview of Sport. Would you have liked to have been on the crew of the Hyacinth and had a dog? I think they might have been happy because they were away from their families. It'd be like someone today, maybe in the service or traveling somewhere, away from their animal, away from a dog they can hug and pet. So Sport was a good friend to all the crew members, along with being a helper. Now, I have a couple books I'd like to show you for you to start thinking about service dogs and working dogs. Perhaps you've seen a service dog helping someone. It might be someone who has limited sight or physical needs, that they need a dog to help them get around and do the things that they'd like to do in their lives. That's a dog you might have seen before. And of course, we know, and you might look at that dog, and you might look at the person. And I meant to look up again, but you could ask the adults in your life. I'm forgetting. I know you can't go up and pet that dog because that's a working dog. But I think it's okay if you do it in a polite way. But I'm not sure. You need to check. In different circumstances, it might be different, where you might be able to ask the person who has that helper dog, that working dog, can you tell me how your dog helps you? Again, I don't want to, you don't want to assume that they want to talk about it. They may not want to talk about it. They may be doing they may be busy at the grocery store or wherever you might see them, and they have to focus on themselves and their dog in a setting. But at least you might see them and you can see, boy, that's a helper dog. Okay, well, here's a book called Lifeguard Dogs. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it has a Newfoundland on the cover, and Sport was a Newfie. So in my research, I had to find out more about Newfies and what they do. Well, this is modern day. This is what's happening right now. Here's a Newfie, and I think he's part retriever too. He has this is a jacket or like a life preserver that he has learned to wear because he has learned to be a life-saving dog. He's been trained, he or she's been trained. This dog was a he. This is Ariel. Oh no, this is Ariel. So that's kind of like Ariel from Walt Disney movies. I'm forgetting which story, but anyway. So here's what happens. They train the dogs, and the dogs have to learn how to be comfortable in the water, how to swim. And there's a Newfie, there's a lab, and here's a retriever. So retrievers, just like Sport was. And they train them to go out into the water, and they train them, but they also know that these dogs can sense if there's a problem. They're fearless. They train easily. If they've been trained, they remember their training. And whether it's a year later and they see danger, they know they need to go out and help someone. Here's a fun picture of a boatload of puppies starting their training. And if you look carefully here, you can see an older trained dog is modeling how they could bring a boat in. Now, this is, of course, an inflatable boat, so it's light, but there's some big dogs in there too. They're training the dogs to be comfortable out on the water, listen to instructions, not jump out of the water. They might want to go swimming, but no, they need to stay in that boat. So there they are, and here they are having fun with their trainers. Well, this is in Italy, I should have said. But they're hoping other people will do this all around the world. And then, because those dogs love to jump, here they are jumping out of a big raft. And often the dog works with a trainer, and they live with the trainer. Here's an example of the dog has gone out. This is pretend where they're practicing. The dog has gone out with that vest, and a person who needs help to get out of the water is hanging on, and that dog is so strong, just like all the Newfies are very strong, the dog could swim and bring the person to shore. And here's a fun picture. They train the dogs to jump out of helicopters. Now, they've come pretty close to the water line here, but maybe they couldn't get out in a boat fast enough. So here's a Newfie and the trainer jumping out to help someone. This is, again, is a training exercise. And then here they would hoist them up if they had helped someone, pull someone out of the water. So Newfies are a reminder to us to be careful around the water, aren't they? If you're around water, I don't know of any Newfies that are lifesavers in Michigan. And often some of our beaches and our swimming pools should have a lifeguard. But remember, the water is lots of waves, the water is deep, and we can't always rely on Newfoundland. But be careful this summer if you're around water, knowing that that the water can become deep and there can become dangerous. Maybe a couple more minutes. The book was called Lifeguard Dogs by Natalie Lunas. And then I'll just share a few more minutes here of a book that I love called Tail Talk, The Secret Language of Dogs. Now, the reason I got excited about this book is because there's Sport smiling. Have you ever seen a dog smile? Have you ever seen a dog kind of mad, just a little upset? What about a tail wag? There are lots of ways that you can look at the animals in your life and figure out, are they trying to talk to me? How are they feeling? And if you're able to do that, you can take really good care of the animals in your life. One thing I found out too, do you sometimes have someone say to you, look me in the eye, look me in the eye? I haven't been looking at the camera. I've been so focused on my book. Look me in the eye. And when you do, you make a connection with that person. Well, dogs are the same way. If you look dogs in the eye, they might look away, might get a little shy, they might get a little nervous. But if you look them in the eye, that's an important part of starting to train a dog. They know you're talking to them and you mean business. Same with people. We like to look each other in the eye, and we're doing more of that as we're out and about. There's another thing about dogs that's like us. Let's pretend something's happened and someone's kind of given you a little bit of a crabby voice. I would do that with my boys. Okay, not good, not good. Okay. The dog, just like us, they sense the tone of your voice before the words. Just like us, if someone says something in a crabby tone, we go, ooh, we kind of almost even tune out the words because it's the kind of the crowd call it crabbiness in that person's voice. But if you would say to a dog, don't do that, don't do that, more of a serious, not a yelling, not a loud voice, the dog will respond to you better than if you yell loud and have a crabbiness in your voice, just like you hope to not hear crabbiness. Once in a while it comes out, doesn't it? Part of our emotions. So this book is a great way, Tail Talk. And I want to share this from my calendar yesterday. June 17th calendar. Is that dog smiling? Oh, yes, because they turned the sprinkler on. Anyway, whether it's dog ears, eyes. In this book, they talk about soft eyes. If you see a dog with soft, gentle, big eyes, it's a pretty relaxed, happy dog, isn't it? Soft eyes. Now this is interesting, where this is back to how we look at people. And we look at someone, and like dogs too, sometimes it's like a stare and it gets a little scary, like you have to look away. Well, that's what's happened here. One dog's looked at another dog and the other dog's looked away. It's like, I know you're there, but I'm a little nervous. And then it says in this book is that they are communicating that, well, I'm not a threat. If they look away, it's like kind of like, I'm not a threat. I'm not gonna hurt you. This book is so much in it. I could only pick a few. Now, this was new to me. Have you seen a dog yawn? Yawn, we say we're tired. Well, dogs might be yawning, and this is what they say. There might be something going on. The dog just kind of gets away and yawns. And the dog is communicating that, well, I'm doing something else now. I don't want to be involved with this. So it's not like the dog's tired. And it's like a calming signal. The dog's just kind of like, I'm just going to sit here and yawn. Also the scratching, when they scratch their legs, they put their back leg up and scratch. That might not be because they have a scratch or an itch. It might be just kind of like, I'm doing my own thing here, cooling off. We do that, don't we? It's kind of like we have to get away from the action sometimes and do what we want and calm down. So dogs have ways. So you can look for those signals. See, I'm excited about this book. And oh yeah, there's that scratch, which may mean I need some time alone. And then I'll do a little bit here with, here's chilling out. Just like we kind of collapse sometimes and just want to relax. There's a dog just laying there, chilled out. And this is sometimes what we see, where two dogs who don't know each other, or maybe they do know each other, they get in a little bit of a ruckus. Well, what they're saying is sometimes, like this white dog was the puppy. The white dog's is the younger puppy. And throughout history, dogs, little puppies, would lick their mother. Lick their mothers, and it had to do with the mothers would bring the food back, and the puppies were basically saying, give me some food, by licking their mother's or their dad's mouths. So this is going way back in time. It's part of dog history, that this little puppy's just come up to this big dog, kind of just giving a little kiss, giving a little lick on. But well, the big dog's not too excited about that. Like, who is this dog coming up so close to me? And the little dog just did it instinctively. And then the third thing that happened here is the little dog, the big dog didn't get too upset. He just was kind of had a sad, kind of a little bit of a mad face. But the big dog turned his head a little bit. The big dog was being a good dog here. And then it let the little puppy kiss it again. So the big dog is kind of going with that concept of, well, I don't know this little puppy. This little puppy's a little aggravating to me, but I'm going to let that little puppy give me a little kiss again. So again, an example of a book called Tail Talk, and there are other books out there also that talk about how you can look at a dog and figure out how it's trying to communicate with you. Also, I think there are books out there about different barks and whines and barking, how you can think about that. So I guess my reason of sharing that is for you to think of yourself as an observer of dogs, a reader of stories about dogs, I hope, or other animals, and that you'll keep reading and learning, because that's what going to your public library is all about. The more you read, the more you know. And again, I'll end by saying, aren't you lucky to have a public library that has programs for you and lots of books? You can check out as many books as you want. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. And maybe I'll get to your library sometime in the future. Thank you.